think we just went live. So everybody that's out there, good to see you. It looks like we have a few people on already.
Hey everyone.
Good morning, afternoon, whatever it is where you guys are. Let's see here. We'll run a couple of audio tests and we'll get going.
Sounds good.
Perfect. We got the green light, Aaron, that we are both able to be heard. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we're live.
Okay, sounds good. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. I don't know about you, Nate, but it is just windier than God to get out today this morning at my place. Had a flower pot go flying across the yard this morning, so interesting day, interesting weather. So,
well, I'm going to say that I'm extremely thankful, though. Yesterday, happy Easter to all, or belated Easter. It was supposed to rain all day yesterday and be kind of crummy, but it turned out to be a pretty decent day. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with how it went. I'll take today's wind.
Yeah, yesterday was beautiful. I thought it was a good day to get out and have some fun. My kids got to explore the wonders of bubble making in the front porch. That was quite interesting. They're making those big, I don't know if you've ever seen them, big, 3-foot diameter bubbles. Those things are ginormous. It's crazy. You could fit a whole person inside of them. Yeah. Fun to watch. So really cool.
Awesome. So. Yep. Sweet.
So let's dive in here. Be respectful of everybody's time here. We're gonna again bounce back to the the second chapter of this book, where we're in the section of the do less than obsess, but we're actually in section 1 of the great at work. So we're talking about, sorry, my phone went off there. We're talking about now structuring our day effectively so that we're maximizing our time, whether we're handing down orders to our employees or if we're in an employee cycle and we're working our way up. What we need to do is we need to start structuring our day so that we can build and grow together as a team. So to start, we talk about our work harder convention, our old way of thinking, our old thought process, and that is that people who work harder and take on more responsibilities are generally more successful. That has been something that's been said for a long, long time. I think, yes, as you grow, as you develop, you take on more responsibilities. You're viewed from upper management that you can handle this task, so here, take another one, here, take another one. And eventually you get to the point where you burn yourself out. Whether you do it to yourself or your company does it for you, you eventually end up in the same spot, burnt out, and you just can't take on anymore. I mean, you feel that stick of dynamite go off inside your heart and inside your head, and you're just completely cooked as an individual. I've been there. I've walked that path. It's not a very fun path at all. It is very hard to dig yourself out of that hole. So that is the old way of thinking. I'll be 100%.
I got to be honest. I hate that you use the word old because I've grown up with this phrase. I mean, this was what we were taught going into the workforce and how you succeed, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it is. And especially if you're a very driving individual, you're going to probably want to take on the more tasks, and you're going to want to try to do more and do more and do more. But eventually you get to a point where you've overwhelmed yourself. And that, speaking from my personal story is that's what happened to me. I wanted to take on more. I wanted to take on more and do more and do more. And eventually you get to a point where you look around and you don't even know who you are anymore. So that's just a scary place to be in. So that's why we need to change our thought, change the way that we think in our businesses to what we call the Work Smarter convention, which is focus and obsess. So that is how we need to think about things, I think, moving forward, and how we need to change and structure our lives so that we can grow as individuals and we can grow as a company. So focusing is not so much just like laser focusing on one task, on one topic. I think what focus is being selective on your priorities and dedicating your efforts towards excelling towards them. That to me is what focus is. It's not looking at one thing, it's looking at the right thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we're not just taking and saying that you have to just do one item or one task. It's not limiting necessarily the work. It's how we put our attention to it.
Exactly. To say that you should do less is a mistake. You should never say you should do less, because then you just become lazy. But you also need to prioritize your time. Understand that you have to, at some point in time, cut that flag off. You have to understand that, you do feel like you're busy doing this task, whatever it is, this mundane task. You're busy, right? You're filling up your entire day doing it. But is it the most effective use of your time is the question that you have to ask yourself. And oftentimes I think you'll find that you're not. You're just doing things to stay busy. And you're feeling good because you're busy, but it's not the right activity.
Sure. You're finding those activities that may be more fun than the one that really needs to be done, or maybe more simplified than the task that's the most important at hand.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go to the slide here on the do less and obsess principles. Are you on that slide, Nate?
Yep.
So yeah, the first part is we need to wield that razor. We need to understand, what we need to remove in our day to make our time more effective. That is wielding the razor. The second one, tie yourself to the mast, is basically, it is what it is. Tie yourself to the mast and wield the storm. Understand that you're going to have to dedicate your time to these goals. This is where we talk about more on the obsessed side. We need to actually tie ourselves to the mast to get the stuff done, because it's one thing to put it on a schedule and it's another thing to actually do it. So you have to tie yourself to the mast and get it done. That's part of the obsessed part of it.
I like the last one.
Yeah, that's where, I'm not trying to circle around that, but I am, because this is where you get into a little bit of the edgy topics, when to tell your boss to say no, when to say no to your boss. In almost every industry, I think you're almost fearful to tell your boss no. Your fear that you're going to get fired, your fear that you're going to get looked past if you get a raise opportunity or an advancement opportunity comes in, you're afraid to say no. I get it. As human beings, we strive to want to please people, so we want to make our boss happy. So to tell that person no is like, I don't want to make them upset, but
or let them down, right? That's the other side, is letting them down. Yep.
Yeah, but then again, you're also flirting with that line of spreading yourself too thin. You've heard that one a million times over. Oh, we're just spread too thin. Well, you're spread too thin because you took too much on, and your boss might have been happy at the beginning where you said, yeah, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that, but ultimately the end result is a negative because you didn't get that job done, you missed that deadline, or the quality wasn't as good, because you're spread too thin. So that's where that comes in. You really have to understand what your focus is, what you're great at, and that's what you need to excel in when it comes to saying no to your boss. If you scroll to the next slide, this is actually from the survey, and the survey, they actually surveyed these people and asked them, why we don't get enough done in a day. And you'll see that 38% of it is too broad of a scope, and then 24% is related to your boss. And I think if they're both kind of run in the same gamut together, because if your boss doesn't give you, or if you as the boss don't give specific set goals or set tasks for the day, then your scope becomes way too broad and you just can't get enough done. 21% is right here, temptation. That's 21% right there. So take that away. And then 17%, I think is more on the personal side. Maybe you got something going on at home, financially, maybe you're just not financially fit. So it's on your mind. You're worried too much. But I mean, if you look at that, I mean, that's what 62% of it, I think, is attributed to the more management side and how we structure our day. So if you're a boss, if you're an owner of a company watching this, understand the onus that's on you to try to structure your day and structure yourself for your crew. Likewise, if you're on the other side of it, understand that if your boss is not setting clear directive goals and clear objectives to you, that's a big problem, and you're going to spread yourself too thin in both cases. If you're on the boss side and you're doing broad spectrum goals, oftentimes you're probably the one that's left at the end of the day wondering why the hell nothing got done, and you're fixing all of these mistakes.
Or it's taking so long to get done, right? I mean, the time management of it as well. Yep.
Yeah, and that's so crucial, because I often remember times in myself when I was an owner and when I was a boss, and I'm very, very guilty of this. I set sometimes too broad of goals, and then at the end of the day, I'm like, well, why didn't this get done? Okay, well, now I got to call my wife and tell my wife I'm not going to be home for another 3 hours because I got to fix this and get this ready for the next day. So if you're sitting here listening to this and you're understanding it, this makes sense to me. I mean, in fact, on Friday, I'd ask myself same question. Why didn't all this stuff get done? Well, the problem is that you're not very clear and very directed. In modern day,
it's easy because obviously you're the boss, right? So you, in your mind, the most important task that needs to be done. Like you give all these things that need to get done in that week or that month, and you already have an idea of what those are in your mind because they're the tasks you're handing out. But are you clearly and concisely delivering that message of number 1 priority down to number 10 priority so that you can do, right? So then it goes back to the obsess. You can focus this first, this second, this third, 100%. So like you said, it's a management tool to wrap your head around. Are you delivering the right message? And developing as a team together, right? I like this as an open communication. It's not telling your boss that you're giving me too much. It's just saying, hey, what is the top priority? I need to organize the time to it. And, I know I did this as a boss when I'd send the guys out when we had the landscaping business and, certain things need to get done in a certain amount of time because deliveries are coming, materials coming. If I wasn't clear, then I got to back up of materials and no space on the job site to put it. It's a learning experience for everybody.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that rings true in my head is teamwork. I mean, understand that you can't see everything as much as we want to believe that we can. You can't see everything. So you really need to rely on your team to tell you and, have onus to being wrong, own up to that and don't push it off the table. If one of your guys or gals brings something up that you didn't think about, I mean, praise them for doing that because that's going to save you so much time, probably so much money. They really should be recognized for that. So, if we look here I'm on the next slide there, what kind of boss do you have? This is pretty much clear as crystal. Asking yourself, what kind of a boss are you, or what kind of a boss do you have? And these are the things that we really want to look at. Goals and strategies. On a do more boss, they're very vague. They set too many goals. Oftentimes it's unachievable, unattainable. Do less boss is setting clear goals and lists what not to do. So they're not only telling you what to do, they're telling you what not to do. In modern day nomenclature, I think we call that hand-holding a little bit, if you will, and that could be viewed as hand-holding. But you got to understand the value in that hand-holding aspect. I mean, you're not spoon-feeding your employees as babies, but you are setting clear objectives, clear goals, and you're leaving no room for any kind of misinterpretation or any kind of misunderstanding. It's very clear what's going on in the day.
Yeah, and I think I love the acronym, and and most of you may have heard this before. This works in just about any activity that you do, but specifically here about being smart, right? Now, Aaron, I think you know this, but if you took SMART and broke it down, you got specific, so you're setting a specific goal. and you're writing it out in a very specific way. So your details, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
broad language. It's specific language, but it's measurable. It's attainable, right? So it's not getting too far out ahead. The dreamer kind of mentality. That it's a realistic type of goal and that it's timely. So we're measuring it. Again, you're saying, hey, we need this done, this many activities done, and then you've got the timeline, right? And you're setting that realistic timeline of by the end of the month. So I think as you think about how do I become do less, obsess, and we look at what the layout here is: do more, boss; do less, boss. If we're just smart about what our thought process is about getting things done or delegating it out to the other people in the company, if we list that out and we think to ourselves, is this a smart goal? Is this a smart list? Do we have the right amount of time allocated to it based on its necessity and ranking in the level of needing to be done, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's very good. That's a very good acronym. I've used that one many times over. That's a good way of thinking about things. I think another thing to understand too is that you're gonna fail too. I mean, don't be afraid to fail. That's one of my big quotes that I say to myself is don't be afraid to fail, because it is so hard to see everything, plan things out in a day. It is so hard to. You have so much going on, whether it's material orders coming in, job site allocation, then this guy shows up sick and so on and so forth. It's so hard to get stuff done in a day, but as long as you're clear and you're concise, I think people will follow you. People will continue to follow you through your mistakes if you do have them. You do have to correct from them. Don't keep making mistakes, but it's okay to fail and recharge and recycle. So nothing wrong with that at all.
Yep.
So the next slide is when to not focus, which is going to be a little counterintuitive, but it is very important that we do have some time that we don't focus. And I like the first one the most. When you're generating new ideas, you don't really want to have a very clear and concise process for generating new ideas. You just want to sit down and just let your entire mind just dump out. That's what that is saying right there. So if you're trying to think of a new trend in the industry, or if you're trying to think of a new process or a new way of doing things, let your mind flow. Let that creativity come out. That's why you are where you're at in your lifetime. That's why you are an owner. That's why you are a manager, is because you're not afraid to just let things go out and be creative. That's so important to do.
Yeah. Yep.
The next one, when you know your options, but you can't choose. That's another hard one to focus on, because I think if you have a clear and concise way of doing it, you're probably going to choose the wrong one. So you have to kind of let your mind flow a little bit when it comes to the options and choosing the right one. You have to spend some time evaluating, maybe a little bit longer than you would have. So if you're looking at maybe a service quote from some guy, and this one is probably the clear option because it's the cheapest one, but maybe there's some added value in going with B. The choices are there, but you can't figure out which one. Make sure that you take the time to evaluate them beyond your set scope of things that you normally do. So that's what that's saying. So those are just two options of not focusing, letting your mind flow and wander.
It's good, because you have to get outside that box, otherwise you become very robotic, and you can't move on to the next one, right? You're stuck. So you do have to. I have a hard time, and I'm going to leave a horrible image in everybody's mind. I get it. I love when I'm getting ready in the morning. You're in the shower, you're relaxed, your mind can just go. I need some of that waterproof paper in there, because it's like when the majority of the ideas, I'm like, oh, I got to do this, I want to do this, and it's clear to me, like I've got to focus for some reason. It's weird when I'm not actually trying to focus.
Yeah, no, that's a very good example. I mean, I'm sure we all find times in the day. I hope it's not at night when you're trying to go to sleep. Many times it is, but yeah, when you're in the shower, I think it's very, very important, no matter where you are in life, to have that 15 minutes of time where you just let your mind wander. Whether you're thinking of a movie that you just watched, or what you're going to do for the next day, or it just lets your mind go. I mean, you spend so much time being hyper focused and hyper looked at and under a microscope that sometimes you just got to let it all go. Put the sweatpants on and sit back and just let it go. And that's so healthy, I think. We spend so much time with our physical bodies getting healthy, but sometimes our mental bodies need some work too. And I think letting your mind wander is probably the best exercise for that.
Yep.
So that's all we got on this topic, really. We wanted to really spend the time building those tools to get to this point. When we first talked about the learning loop, understanding how to develop new ideas. The second topic was that P squared principle and unlocking passion and purpose. And then now we've kind of structured our day. So now we kind of have the tools, we have the process, and that's how we work. We work most effectively within ourselves, within our own realm. Next week, we'll jump to working with others. We'll talk first about the forceful champion, being a forceful champion, understanding what is the new true grit, actually having grit and understanding how to grind through a day. That's going to be what we're going to talk about next week. So we're jumping beyond that.
I want to jump back real quick on this do less, obsess thing.
Yeah.
We're speaking to it about a normal day, and we keep talking. And I hate to use the word normal because what is normal and what isn't normal, but we are living in some unusual times, especially when we look at how our work-life balance is, and we're all crammed in. I'm in my home office, and 10 feet away. It's hard to separate, right? It's hard to do less and focus, or thinking about that concept right now when you're at home. I know for me is a challenge because you want to feel busy. I want to go back to that. You want to feel busy, like you're bringing value and that you're still doing everything you can for the company, that you're not lazy. And I think I know for me personally at least, that sitting here, I need to focus. I'll be right out and open. I have a hard time with figuring out my list of things that I need to worry about first, obsess and focus on that, and then move on. Because again, if I was to turn the camera here, I have more computer screens than any one person should have, and it is way too easy to get distracted or to try to focus on too many things or worry about too many things to get done, instead of really honing down what is it that I need to do, how do I focus on it, stay on it, and move on to the next thing when that's done. You know what I mean? Like, this is a key time, I think, to really take some of this and suck it in and go, boy, this is a good opportunity to really test this, because these are challenging times to work through.
Yeah. I think as things, no matter where you are in your state, in your jurisdiction, whether you can work or whether you can't work, I think now is really the time that we're going to be exposed. We personally are going to be exposed for our weaknesses. And if we're not spending time learning how to be better and learning how to be different and differentiate ourselves from our competition, we're going to fail. We're going to falter. So yes, if you have trouble focusing, now's the time to work on focus. And I mean, especially more now than ever, because we're finding different ways of working. And I think that's the one benefit that I look into what's happening right now is I think the weeds are going to get trimmed a little bit, if you will. I think those that really want to grow are going to be able to grow, and those that are just going to sit there and wait and let the wind blow over them, those are the ones that are going to get chopped. So I think you have to spend an insane amount of time right now trying to figure out different ways of doing things. I was watching some webinars, and guys were trying to do business as usual on the landscaping side in different ways. They're doing a lot more FaceTime video chats with customers. They're doing 3D walkthroughs where they're sending them to them. They're just doing some really creative things. And now is that time to understand that find that creativity inside you and expose it. Learn, get stronger. That's all what we need to be doing right now.
Well, and it's out of necessity that new trends start, right? Or new ways of doing things all blossom out of necessity. And we're in a time right now that, make no mistake, it's not going to go back to the old way, right? And,
No.
The new technologies that are I don't even want to call them new technologies. I think for a lot of us, we're finally adapting to the technologies that are around us, utilizing them more, learning, more finite tips and tricks with them to implement them into our normal day. These things are going to be around. I mean, this is going to impact the new way of doing business. Whether it's, it's going to be a little bit different on a manufacturing side to a sales side, but in each individual aspect and in each individual type of business, the way we've been doing it up to this point is going to be different on how we do it on the back end now. I mean, things are going to be incorporated. We're going to go back to some of those old ways, but these new technologies or new ways of communicating are going to be ingrained and embedded into everything going forward here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm going to take a simple example of one gentleman was talking about a simple morning check-in. They used to have a morning check-in at their office, and now because of the 6-foot social distancing thing, they don't do it anymore at the office. They just have people call in on FaceTime. You can't be calling in. You have to have a FaceTime call-in or a Google Hangouts call-in, but those meetings are now done more efficiently because guys are always on time with them. They're actually talking more because they're not in face to face. They're virtual face to face, which I thought was kind of interesting. And they're not waiting for that person to come in. They just know wherever they're at. If they're at home, if they're in the truck, on the job site, whatever, they can just click on the phone. They're all there right on time. So it's actually saving time, saving money, and they're developing more ideas from that simple change. Something that we didn't even think about, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. We didn't even think about things like that. So personally, I feel like the fear of everything is ending. We've gotten past that whole entire we're scared to go out. Now it's time for we want to get back to work. And so now we got to start thinking of creative ways to get back in it, get back into the cycle of things, get around this whole entire elephant in the room that is COVID-19 and get back into a cycle and get smarter, I think is the big one. Get smarter.
Yeah. And I really want to push out the message of, take what we absorb and learn in these book chats, the book club here. And this isn't just for our group to take in and learn, right? I mean, we want to take this and put it in our day. But man, oh man, what a great message to take some of this and teach our customers, teach the people that we do business with and help them and see what we can do to contribute back to their life. Because obviously that in turn is going to contribute back to yours, right? I really see this as a great message to push out to those that may need a little bit more focus themselves.
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
Awesome. Well, I think this was a good one. I look forward to next week. So specifically, Aaron, for those of them that are following along. Where we at in the book that they can follow?
We are going to be, bear with me for a second. We're going to jump into part 2, which is called Mastering Working with Others, in chapter 6 called Forceful Champions. So we're going to talk about the Forceful Champions. 6. Yep. We'll be diving into that next week. Like I said, we're moving away now from working on our own personal tools and now working with others in that team setting. So that's the way the book is structured, and that's how we're moving along. So it'll be good content, I think, next week, talking about grit. I love grit. Grit is one of my favorite words.
Awesome. Well, for everybody that's on and watching this, thank you very much. I don't know. I look forward to next week.
It'd be good. Have a great week, guys. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, concerns, or if you just want to yell at us and tell us that we're absolute bullshitters. We can do that too.
I like that part, yes. All right. Thank you, Aaron. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. We'll see you.